Please be advised that in order to foster quality discussions in each episode, we will spoil the stories in each game and text we talk about. Good news is, 90% of the titles we cover are old enough that many of you might already know all about them. That said, we do encourage you to play and read before listening.
Listen up now, when the leave on, get ready for arcadebookshop. With your ball, play a game, check it out. Don't be lame, listen up now, when the leave on, get ready for arcadebookshop.
So because you weren't willing to put down $20, 20 measly dollars to play this game, I'm just going to sit here and tell you about it.
I know everything about the game. I don't need you to tell me about it. I watched the plot summary 10 minutes before we got on air.
But you know, Caleb, you can't know everything about a game if you haven't played it. And I realize this purpose of this podcast is mainly to talk about story, but I'd really think in this case, you don't get the full experience of the story if you're not playing it.
Oh, I think I got it. I got it all.
I don't know.
I experienced it secondhand.
And I'm gonna get ahead of you here. Before you start bitching about it again, I'm gonna play Fear and Hunger, and we've already established it. So you don't need to keep bitching, Caleb, about me not playing Fear and Hunger, because it's already an established episode with a book pairing. So don't sit there all high and mighty in your seat telling me what to do when you won't spend 20 measly dollars to play this wonderful game.
It's not worth $20.
I think it is.
It's like 5 years old. It's not a very long gameplay if you're not an idiot. So it's like, why do I want to spend $20 on something I'm going to beat in a couple hours? Come on, Bryce.
It's challenging.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to Arcade Bookshop, everybody, where we talk about video games and their literary counterparts for all of you who love to play and to read. Thank you so much for listening and joining us today. I'm Bryce Yoli, and as always, I'm here with my pal and cousin-in-law, Caleb James.
Yeah, it's me.
Today we're talking about this really, really weird and brain-crippling awesome video game called Return of the Obra Dinn. It's another indie game available pretty much anywhere you game. And as you know, we've paired this game with our last episode on Stephen King's On Writing, a Memoir of the Craft. And again, this idea came to us by recommendation of our prior guest, Jay Malone of the SquarePegs YouTube channel. He asked if we could talk about On Writing by Stephen King, which deconstructs the writing process, then cover a game that similarly reinvents our preconceptions of what a video game can be. Yeah.
Word.
So Return of the Obra Dinn, here's the synopsis.
Hold on a second.
What? What's your problem?
Did something get really loud in your room, or is it my laptop? It's like a fan just went.
I don't hear anything.
It's my laptop. I don't know why. It must be sucking up some power, but
I don't hear anything.
As long as it's running and you don't hear it, I guess it's fine.
All right. Sorry for that digression, folks. Technical difficulties.
I don't want my computer to blow up. It's expensive.
Yeah. Return of the Obra Dinn. In late 1802, the merchant ship Obra Dinn set sail with a ship... I'm going to have redundant words here. With a boat full of trade goods. 6 months later, it was missing and declared lost at sea. Then, on October 14th, 1807, the Obra Dinn drifts crewless and torn apart into port at Falmouth. You are an insurance investigator for the East India Company's London office who boards the ship and assesses the mysterious damages. That part kind of got lost on me when I was playing it, that you're an insurance agent, kind of, like, investigator.
Well, yeah, that's the whole point. You're trying to put together what happened to send in your report.
I know, but the thing is, like, you start it, and then you're just, if you're playing it over a couple of weeks, you're just focused on, like, solving a mystery, like, of a bunch of murders. So you kind of forget that, like, in my head, I was like a PI or something like that. So by the end, I was like, oh yeah, and it lists out like all the damages and and like what people owe or what people are owed from the damages and everything like that. And I was like, oh yeah, you're an insurance investigator. But
how exciting!
it is exciting. This game is awesome, and
Got mermaids.
I hate that you didn't play it because I feel like if you did play it, we could have had a really more interesting conversation. It'll still
Got a
be
big
interesting,
octopus monster.
but it does. But I feel like it would have been interesting to see how you solved all of the fates and everything versus how I did, because you can play it differently, and I feel like you have a different way of thinking than I do. You probably would have beaten it a lot faster than me because that's usually what happens.
You know, it was faster though than beating it. Not playing it.
That's true. That is a shortcut that I didn't want to take for the sake of the glory of this show.
Seemed to work just the same watching a video.
Did you watch like gameplay of the whole thing?
No, I started and it was like 10 hours long. So I was like, I'm just going to watch the summary, and it just tells you everybody who died and how they died. And it just basically is the mystery solved immediately.
Well, that sounds lovely and simple and very nice shortcut for Caleb.
Yeah.
But I just think it's remarkable that someone could even make this game. I'm sure there's some kind of science behind it, like setting it up to figure out who killed who, how someone died, and making it this giant puzzle. But I don't know how he did it, but it was incredibly creative to me and clearly a lot of hard work. So it's impressive. So I'm going to talk gameplay since you can't. I'm going to start out by talking about music, because the music keeps you going and the absence of music keeps you going as well. There were really only like, I want to say there's only like 2 songs in the whole game. They're instrumental. They're very 1800s, very like seafaring music, but they're super catchy. I think I was playing something after this that had its own. And I think I played Sea of Stars before this, and then I played this. But both of those have fucking incredible music. But these songs were stuck in my head for like weeks after I finished playing it, and it's just instrumental, like da 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 da. You know, like something you hear on one of those they like those machines at amusement parks. I don't know if they're like calliopes or.
No, we're not using that word ever again. Ray Bradbury episode's done. No more calliopes.
The calliope is an object that exists in the world, and I don't think you can avoid using it if it's a thing that we have to talk about.
We don't have to talk about it. You just brought it up for no reason. It has nothing to do with boats.
The music is good, and that's what it reminded me of.
You could say it reminded you of a carousel. You didn't have to say calliope, you dinglehead.
I couldn't think of I don't always have the words that come directly to my tongue.
Who uses calliope before carousel?
It's a more interesting word than carousel. I don't know. It just popped in there. I think I read it again recently.
I don't like the way it's spelled.
Long story short, music's good. Let's move on.
You run around, you solve mysteries. What's there to talk about, Bryce?
Caleb, we're here for a reason.
Simplicity. Simplicity. That's what we need.
Well, yeah, it's not going to be that. It is very simple. So basically, you board the Obra Dinn and you're investigating the remains of the remains that are available on the boat, and through those you find more evidence to figure out the identities of all of the crew, the fates of all of the crew.
There's 60 motherfuckers on this boat that are accounted for, and there's some that aren't accounted for. They're stowaways.
And by whose hand their fate occurred. So you get a compass and a diary that you fill out with. There's a few photos of like the full crew. And then there's a couple other photos that it's like 3 or 4 specific pieces of evidence that you're given in the beginning, or not necessarily evidence, but supporting documents to help you determine everything. But you're given very, very little. You have to explore the ship. use logical deduction, and also a bit of educated guessing. And so basically, whenever you find someone's remains, it opens this audio clip on a black screen. It's kind of just like, they're kind of like the subtitles for a silent movie where it's just like a black screen with white text. So it's like that. Then once the audio finishes playing out, it cuts to a still of a 3D, like an interactive portion of the ship. So it's like a blocked off portion of the ship with the still event from where the audio left off. So like these characters are all posed in certain ways, like right before someone is murdered or killed or dies, or however they expire. So basically you investigate that little still image in a 3D way, and it's like they're contour drawings. So it's kind of like you're in the book. It's really interesting. He also, the creator also refers to it as like a reinvention of old like Mac computer games.
Well, he had a
Where
game before this, the creator, Lucas Pope.
yeah,
What was it called? Something Paper, but it was basically
Papers,
this
Please.
it was basically this kind of game, but very old school computer looking, almost like the point and click games we played, like Deja Vu.
Right, and that's kind of how I was describing this.
It's like a 3D version.
Yeah, this is. I feel like I'm not very good at discussing games in terms of the appropriate genre they belong to. And I don't know if this is, in fact, just a case where it doesn't really belong to one genre, but it does seem to me that it's more along the lines of point and click, only it's much more interactive. And like you're actually moving around the scenes, whereas point and click, you're typically just kind of still, and at least in the
Pointing
classic
and
ones,
clicking.
you're just still and looking around a still image of a room, pointing and clicking. But this one's just far more interesting. But you have to pay like really close attention to the details in all these scenes, and you have to revisit them over and over again to determine who's who based on like literally any visual clue that might be placed in the environment. And often it's like clothes or the actions they're in the middle of performing, who they're associating with, what part of the ship they're most commonly found. And within those scenes, you usually find more evidence of someone else's death that leads you to additional scenes and additional crew fates. And it's this chain reaction. So a lot of times it's like you find one pile of remains or something like that, some object that takes you to a chain of events. So it's like one scene you investigate, and then it leads you to another one. It's usually like 5 linked together, and you can kind of figure out how to revisit them based on how you catalog, how you enter them into the book that you have. It's hard to explain, and if you played it, you might be able to elaborate on that a little more, but overall, it's very, very frustrating starting out. Incredibly frustrating. I figured out like a couple identities like right off the bat, like obvious ones, and then for like I swear it was like 3 hours, I was getting fucking nothing.
I know you were very mad.
And then I was getting so mad in the beginning, but eventually you start breaking through just a couple. And the way it works is you have to guess, well, not guess, like some of them you can actually determine who they are, but you aren't, it doesn't confirm that you've figured out who is who until you correctly determine 3 identities, fates, and causes of whoever killed them. It's always like 3 things usually that you have to figure out. So you have to figure out 3 of them completely correctly before it tells you that you guessed any of them correctly. So there's an extra layer of challenge there. But overall, this game it's like it really is very little gameplay, but it was so enjoyable. And I know like you say it's a waste of money and because it's so short and there's not a lot involved, but I've never felt like I maybe I have in the past, but I just felt very satisfied by the end of this. I was pissed and I felt like it was going to be a waste of time in the beginning. But when you finish it, when you as you start realizing that you're actually getting somewhere, you're like, oh my God, this is fucking incredible. Because I can't imagine building anything like this myself. And I can't, it feels like an intellectual game. I just can't imagine making anything like that, especially because this guy does these games all by himself.
Yeah.
It's really crazy. But what I feel like makes this so much more than a point and click is the way the story is clearly huge and present, but also kind of like in the background, because it's not telling you the story. It's not eager to tell you what's happening. It wants to make you work for it, and it requires great effort and mental strain to solve the puzzle and literally earn the story. And most games, I feel, do the opposite. Games and movies, I feel as though they're eager to get you to the end, almost to the point where they overdo it. They overtell by the end, and
It's
it
like
ends up
restaurants
spoiling it.
now. Once you go in, they just want to rush you out. Like, they don't want you to
Yeah,
stay there and enjoy your time. They just want your goddamn money and then leave.
right. So that's really all the gameplay is. So I think we can, and this might be a shorter episode, but I think we can get into how this plays with story and how this deconstructs what a video game can be. So I wanted to start by looking at this game, like deciding how to look at it as a video game. Specifically, it uses minimalism and mundanity juxtaposed with a story full of chaos, because it's not it's a complicated game to build, especially for one person, but really it's very simple. It's the game itself is just walking around, opening a couple of doors, and then clicking on bodies and letting scenes play out.
And you can make this game in any genre, which would be cool. It's just like a whole series of games just like this. But, medieval, Celtic warriors, Wild Wild West. Like, you could do all kinds of fun stuff if he ever pursued, or anybody who liked this game pursued, creating more in this. Like you said, not really a genre, but it could be its own genre.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting that he doesn't use more adventurous themes like that. It seems like all of his games are about like mundane shit.
To the Murakami of video game making.
Yeah, because like if you look at this game, it's funny because it's like, oh, this is you're on a ship in the 1800s. You're setting sail.
No, not quite.
There aren't pirates, but there are beasts. But at the same time, present day, you're a fucking insurance investigator. Like
Yeah.
you work for an insurance company. Really, you're
Which actually falls into the trends of the time period, because like you look at Bram Stoker's Dracula, Jonathan Harker, what was he like? Realtor, basically. Like, he's just like selling property or something. Like a very boring job. Like a lot of the stories that were set in that time period, they had boring jobs, and that's your protagonist, or that's how the story's unfolding. It's through their eyes, but then it's like we could add a bunch of crazy elements.
Yeah, I love it because it's like it has those simple, down to earth, boring premises, but then you deal with murder and like hysteria and these mysterious beasts attacking and the mysterious objects that attract the beasts. It's like I wrote in parentheses here. It's like insurance plus treason at sea. It's really interesting the way he does this. And I haven't played Papers, Please, but I think it's a similar thing. Like you're just, I mean, I don't know in depth what Papers, Please does, but it seems like you're an immigration inspector.
Yeah.
Controlling the flow of people entering certain countries.
It's far less intricate, but it's also in the same vein of this game.
Yeah. And that one isn't even like 3-dimensional navigating. So it's even simpler, really. And I think it has a little bit more definition by the end than this one does. It answers a few more questions, but yeah, I just love this. I love this idea of but the other end I was going to say is how he uses simple graphics to build these games and to tell these stories. I love that he used the old like Mac graphic style, like the contour drawing kind of like
if
the
this
contour
was in like
animations.
a high graphic modern kind of art style, I don't think it would nearly hit people the same way. I don't think people would be as
Right.
interested because it wouldn't
No,
be
they
that
wouldn't.
unique looking.
Yeah, it's almost like better, but like playing a Virtual Boy game.
Yeah.
Only you don't have to burn your eyes out in 15 minutes
You're not looking at the sun all day.
staring at a red, completely infrared fucking screen.
Who thought that was a good idea?
I can't believe that existed. That's insane.
You need to take a break every 15 minutes or your retinas will detach. Great.
Basically, don't play this hardly. Just buy this, but don't really play it. Just
Here's 5 games. We'll never make any more.
Ridiculous. So also this story is told backwards for the most part, since you're playing as an insurance investigator. That's what you would do. So you board the ship, and you're obviously you're gonna find like the first thing you're gonna find is probably one of the last people that was killed, and then you work your way backwards. So you experience the worst of the murders and the deaths, and work your way back to more mild things. For the most part, you kind of jump around here and there in ways, but that made it even more interesting because I'd be interested to know how Lucas Pope writes these things. Like, did he start from the beginning or did he start from the end? How do you
I think it'd be
write
easier
like,
just to start from the beginning.
Yeah, but you never know.
I mean, you just write the story beginning to end, and then when you're making the game, you go backwards.
You could, but you could also. How I tend to write stories, because otherwise I get off the fucking chain. I start writing from the beginning, and then as I'm writing, I brainstorm like where I want it to go, and then I kind of like jot out an idea of how I want it to end, and then I fill it in from there to lead up to the ending. Because otherwise, I'll just keep going and going and going, and creating too many details.
Yeah.
And going off the rail and not getting to where I need to actually be. So I would be curious to get a definite answer on that. I don't know what he does, but he did it. He did it incredibly well. The story really has all the markings of a writer who knows what he's doing, or an insurance investigator with an affinity for 1800s ship at sea stories. Who knows? Who really knows? But Lucas Pope did work for Naughty Dog. Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was working on like Uncharted and shit, I think.
Yeah, he did at least 2 of them.
Yeah, and then he ended up doing stuff by himself. So I think he has his own page where he talks about, or he kind of blogs about all of the stuff he's working on. And as far as I can tell, he truly does do these games all by himself, which is really remarkable. And I think the interesting thing about this game, and likely his other games based on what I've read about them, is that they feel more confident in themselves, I think, because it's only built up and written by one person. I had this thought, like, how did I put it? Shit, where did I write that down? Oh, like what is the difference between art created by one person and art created by many people? Like, I feel like this game works so well because it's one artist's complete vision.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel as though other games tend to get muddy because, like, they need those large crews of people working on them because they're big and they're, like the AAA games. But at the same time, there's almost like too many ideas floating around.
It's too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, and they have to cut things. They have to make cuts and balance it out so that it works and is ready to ship or ready to sell. But I think when you have that many ideas and you're clipping here and there, you're probably unevenly clipping a variety of ideas in a way that creates a product that's like really clearly an amalgamation more than a centralized, completed idea. Does that make sense?
Sounds sensible.
Cool, man. So, what research did you do, Caleb?
You're breathing directly into the microphone over and over again. That's all I can
Never
hear.
had a problem.
I have a problem with it. It sounds like I am in a windstorm. Am I saying this just because I'm putting off the fact that I did no research? I don't know, maybe. No, I do have a little bit of fun information about this game. The game itself was almost sunk, no pun intended, because Lucas Pope did not realize when he created this game the problem he was going to have with locality. So when you create these kinds of games and you want to have an international sales, I guess, you want to sell it internationally, other languages, to people from around the world, you can't just have it in English. You have to have a translatable version that they can play. So Japanese, Chinese, whatever language. And he found that it was very problematic because not just the simple fact that, here's some simple sentences. Buck Cunningham was stabbed to death. Seems pretty straightforward, but that doesn't translate directly into every language. But that's still an easy workaround. But then the locality issue of sometimes certain words like knifed, like somebody got knifed, that's not a thing in some languages. Like that's just not, they wouldn't understand what that means. So apparently that was very troublesome, and being able to do all these different translations and stuff and have the game in different languages was very problematic and almost just sunk the whole thing before it even got off the ground, or at least before you released it, obviously.
Yeah, I saw something about that and I was confused about what that actually meant. I listened to him talk about it a little bit, but I don't know if it was the way he was answering the question, but I couldn't really understand what he was talking about when he was talking about locality. So yeah,
Well,
that is really,
put it for this information. Like, put it this way. So, say you wanted to translate it into Spanish. Well,
yeah.
Cuban
No, I get what
Spanish.
you're saying.
Yeah, so like Cuban Spanish is different than Mexican, different than Spain. Like, so just the meaning of things, even if it is all in the same language, could be different based on locality, which is something I never thought about when it comes to any works being
Yeah.
translated.
Yeah, that is really weird, especially for a game as simple as this. You'd think it would be like cut and dry, but yeah, I guess it's so weird to me how languages like that. Like
Well, it makes me wonder how
it,
they handle that in other games. Like, I mean, this
right.
obviously can't be a problem just with this one game. There's games that have way more dialogue and way more, like Fear and Hunger, for example. There's parts of the game where you're just reading whole stories out of a book. Like, so, yeah, I mean, just to translate that and do you worry about the locality? I don't know. But again, maybe because this is a detective style game, you really have to make it make sense, versus a game that just, oh, this is just some fun information or an added story. Might not need to know or understand all the details, but in this game, you do.
Right. And the game like Fear and Hunger, do you like that was definitely translated across,
I'm
different
sure it
languages?
was. It's one of the top games on Steam, so I'd imagine.
Yeah,
Or
okay.
use Sea of Stars for an example. That has to be in a bunch of languages, right?
Yeah, I would imagine.
At the very least,
Uh,
Japanese.
and you said, well, did you say Fear and Hunger is also just made by one person?
I'm sure that guy had like a team he put together, but I forget the guy's name, but he created the game as I think like his thesis project or something, like for school.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure it did very well, or I'm sure he got an A+. But then it got very popular. But I think he probably has a team. Like I don't remember the credits, but I'm sure there's a big, a large team of artists and different things. It wasn't just one guy. Other than this game, I've never seen a game that's just one guy created
Right.
everything.
Yeah, and I feel like that's where the biggest difference is. I'm sure there must be other people that do it, but yeah, I would imagine like it's hard enough to code something, even if it's a simple game,
Yeah.
and that's where he talks about most of the difficulties being, and then like things like locality is where he was surprised. It's like, man, I thought it was gonna be like a 6-month project, he said, and it turned out to be like I mean I don't know how long it ended up being, but it was like way far longer than he expected to spend on working on this game. And he honestly listened to an interview today. It honestly sounded like he expected it to kind of just fail, because he didn't think it was nearly as good as Papers, Please. Uh, but because it was so successful, he was actually thinking about. Did you read that he was actually thinking about retiring after making this
No,
game?
I did
He's not
not.
even. He's probably like in his 40s.
Mm,
He was talking about retiring as this game is just fucking uh ended up kind of being miserable to complete.
yeah.
He loved the idea, but so much went into it. Like even as far as I heard him talk about designing the ship. Did you hear anything about that?
No.
He said he looked into like how those old ships were built and constructed and like the blueprints of them. And apparently you can't just go on the internet and find things like that. You
Really?
you have to actually, yeah,
Go
you
to
can order
museums and
books
shit.
online, but you can only find those things in physical books, at least accurate ones, I guess. And so he used those to design the Obra Dinn, and it sounds like that was one thing that he did not. He thought it was going to be like the simple things. It's kind of
Yeah.
it's just a shoebox. It's a shoe that you build walls around, and you add walls inside for rooms, and just add furniture or whatever. I guess it was just way more complicated than that. And I mean, I can imagine, because the way the game works, the story goes backwards, and then as you're going backwards through the story, you're also going deeper down into the ship,
Yeah.
because there's like three floors or so to it, and it's confusing when you're navigating it too. You get confused about which floor you're on. Fortunately, you kind of figure it out by looking at the book that they give you, but yeah, it's wild. It doesn't like, because sometimes it's almost the feeling like when we talked about what's that shit called, the way like House of Leaves works, or like when we watched that Doom video where the guy made a level inspired by House of Leaves.
Um, are you talking about ergodic literature, or are you talking about
Liminal
liminal
space.
space? Yeah.
That yeah, that it feels like that in a way. It's like this doesn't, but I'm sure it does. But that's where I'm saying it's like I can't believe it's just another way. It's like, how did one person do this? Because he basically had to design a ship, like an actual
Yeah.
saleable ship, virtually.
Well, we're going to be having this conversation in the future because I was looking up Fear and Hunger. The creator, he's a Finnish guy, Miro Havarinen. I'm pretty sure I'm fucking his name up. He actually almost solely designed the game himself. So,
Oh wow.
so when you play that game and you realize it took him 2 years. When you realize the detail of that game, you're gonna like. It makes me think of how the fuck is that even possible? Like that guy must be an alien. Like the Obra Dinn looks like that was very difficult to make, but Fear and Hunger is on another level because it has so many
Okay.
endings and I don't know. So apparently we just stumbled into some indie geniuses out there who are
I was gonna
doing
say like
incredible
these.
things.
I admire these fucking people who seem like absolute fucking geniuses.
I
Because
know
like
video
when
game
I'm
making's a lot easier than it used to be now, but still, like some of this stuff is crazy.
no, because it's still like storytelling, which is hard enough in itself, and then you have to add knowing code and video game design in general to all of that. It's just
It's insane.
yeah. But anyway, I think overall the feeling that I get from this game is it, which kind of I kind of wrote this down, and then in the interview that I viewed of him or that I listened to of him, he specifically says he doesn't want to make games that just give you anything. Like he give you everything. And the way that I experienced Return of the Obra Dinn is that it knows it has its interesting story and it doesn't give a shit if you ever figure out the whole thing. It demands that you work to think and get angry and get bored and get stuck. And it demands that you push through those things. And in that way, it's a lesson in persistence and reward that most games do not provide. Um, that said, I have more to talk about deconstruction. We can ask a few questions about the game itself. But did you look into it all, the supernatural stuff in this game with the beasts and everything?
Like the mermaids, the seashells, the octopus
Yeah,
monster, the crab people, guys
yeah,
riding
the
crabs.
crab
Uh,
riders.
Not really. I didn't just because I know a lot of like mythological stuff that's based off of, so I didn't think it was very pertinent to look into it. I mean, maybe in regards to the story, it's probably more important, but since I didn't play the game, I don't really feel like I need to know it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just an extra thing. Like, I don't know if you could argue that he doesn't fully know what the purpose of those things are. I'm sure he does if you put him in there, but you could argue that it might just be like that extra layer of like chaos for the player to experience and try to like wrap their heads around. But
From what I watched, it doesn't seem
it
like there's really a backstory to any of that, so you wouldn't know what the mermaids necessarily signify or their purpose or what they are.
right. And that's where it's like, oh, I'm really just an insurance
Yeah.
investigator here. I can get my best educated guesses on what happened here, but I can never actually understand it at all.
Does it even explain what
But
the shells are, or that mercury acid, whatever it is that like burns people up when they throw the shells in it in that big box?
no, it's I don't think it's like an acid. I think it's just I don't think I took it as the object was just like holy or something, and when they touched it, it burned. That's how I took it, but I don't know. But
I think that would have made me mad though, not having answers to some of that stuff. Like if I played the game, I'm like, well, what the fuck was the purpose? Like, what was the stuff that they had? Like, what are these shells? Like, what was the point of this?
well, I think that's kind of the cool thing about it. Uh, because basically what happens is these travelers find this box with special shells in it, and once they find it, this chaos ensues. Like people go mad. Uh, the mermaids are trying to get them back, so they got them from somewhere where these mermaids were protecting it or something. And I mean, you deduce that, and then after the mermaids, there's these giant crabs that are ridden by these black figures. They call them crab riders, and then and then the last thing they experience is this kraken just demolishing everybody on the ship. And there is like all you can do is watch and listen to the story as it's playing out, and you can't get any definitive answers. And it leaves the ultimate explanation of the story up to the player's imagination. And I think the cool thing is there are still players online conjecturing about what the beasts are and where they came from and what the mythology is that Lucas Pope is using. And I think that's exactly what he wants. And I think that is greatly satisfying for him. And I get that it's frustrating that you don't understand. You can't get like a full, like, oh, that is definitely what happened. But it's also kind of the what makes it special.
The only thing that I have to counter that is it goes back to the gun principle. So if you introduce a gun in a story, somebody better fire it or the audience is going to be left disappointed. So when I read a story or play a game that has a story that doesn't, you don't have to wrap everything up, but if there's no explanation for any of the things that happen, so you bring up all these mythological sea monsters and stuff, but even the basis of the story, which is the shell, like that's the one thing they should have explained. Like, okay, why the mermaids want the shell or the kraken, where it came from, or the crab people. You could leave that out, like the results of why this is coming to be, their purpose. You don't have to have that, but the shell thing to me at least has to be explained. If it's not explained, it's going to piss a lot of people off, I would think. Like that is my opinion, is the one part that's bad storytelling, because you introduce something that's the catalyst for this whole story and you don't explain it. It's kind of irritating.
Well, I see what you mean. However, I do feel like and I think if you played straight through it and you were able to somehow finish this game without spending a lot of time on it, you might be dissatisfied with the story. But I think because because of the way it works, where you have to constantly revisit all of these scenes to find enough evidence to make educated guesses and determinations about who's who and what happened, I feel like it really immerses you in the story, or what is given of the story. And I feel like without actually getting definitive answers, you get this sensation of like just understanding. Sort of like how we talked about Sound and the Fury, I guess. You kind of just let it wash over you.
Yeah, and maybe you make up the game like, okay, maybe this is what it is, and you can deduce your own. I mean, since you're deducing the whole game anyway, maybe it's just, well, what do you think the shells represent, or what are they, or why the mermaids want them, and you could almost create your own story. That can be fun. I understand why people might like that.
Yeah, because there's also this element of there are a lot of different people on the ship. There are British people. I don't know if it's American people or not, but there's British people. There are Indians. There are, I think, Chinese. There's some Russians. There's all different kinds of people. And I feel like there's this idea of like, there's a theme of like plundering and the results that follow, and like you know what I mean, kind of like a deadly sin kind of thing going on in the background, where it's like what happens when white people try to take things. I feel like there's something there like that. And again, you can't know for sure, but that was that feeling I got. Like I think the captain's wife was a Native American, so it starts there for me.
It's a little different.
You know what I mean, though? Like, there's that plundering theme. Like what? Like just white people taking things from other.
Don't take
other
what's
cultures.
yours, or you're gonna have consequences.
I mean, don't take what's not yours, right?
Yeah, sure. Whatever.
But so I made a little list of questions here for the idea of deconstruction and questions we have to ask in terms of what is this game asking us to rethink about the function of most video games. We have talked about some of it over this conversation, but first thing, the biggest thing that I think he prompts in his games is that like, should video games be a passive experience, or should they make you think and work to get to the end?
They should be an active experience where you have to work. If it's passive, what's the fun? At least in my opinion. Like that was one of our only real gripes with Sea of Stars is it is almost impossible not to just beat the game if you're playing it.
Right.
You know, like if you just try, you beat it. You don't have to really work for it. You just can get through it. This sounds like one of those games where if you don't try very hard, you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And how I've heard him talk, it really sounds like that's a big thing for him. Like creating a simple game that's fun and makes you learn something along the way. And I think that is something that needs to be added back into games instead of them just being like cinematic adventures that just happen to you. Like you should be making it happen. Then I asked, should video games be... Well, I said video games should not be too unreasonable, and if they are, there should be a good reason or a quality reward. Right?
What does that mean?
I'm saying like when games are unreasonably difficult.
Okay, so if
And
a
then
game
you
is
get...
very difficult, there should be a purpose for that. So the reward should, mirror the difficulty level or
Yeah,
reflect the difficulty level.
right. And I feel like a lot of games, when they do try to make it challenging, it's challenging just to be challenging. And then you're just left with like, well, I fucking did it, and that's all.
So like the old original NES games, like maybe a Castlevania or a Ninja Gaiden that's super fucking hard, and then you get to the end and all you get is a congratulations, and it's like, oh, that's
Or a
worth all that effort.
congratulations.
Congratulations, yeah, like that
Yeah.
was worth all the effort that I put forth. I don't even get a real ending. I just get congratulations.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And I feel like this game does exactly that. The opposite of that.
It does exactly that. It just says, good job. And
no, because
thanks for the $20, fuck boy.
Because it withholds the story the way it does. When you finally accomplish a piece of it, even just getting 3 identities, it's like, oh my god, I fucking did it. It just feels so good.
Oh yeah.
And I also said video games should make you appreciate advancements in technology without forgetting the expression of the past. And I think I was thinking that way both in terms of graphics and functionality and in terms of present day stories versus stories of another era. I feel like Lucas Pope is able to use, modern technology to improve the styles of the Mac era, right?
Yeah.
And bring them back and appreciate them again. And then we also tell kind of a new he tells a new story in within history. And I mean that's very common nowadays, but I think that's just something else that he's like, it seems like he really likes to talk about historical mundanity.
Do you know if this is a new format of game or if there are other games that are made like this, like where you just walk around and it's 3D, but nothing's actually moving other than you? And it doesn't have to be solving mysteries, but just like this style. Because it's almost like when you are for anyone who hasn't played or watched, it's like when you do, like you're playing one of those, let's say you're watching a video on game development or when the game developers are able to go to I think it's like called God mode, where you could just go around the whole game. You can go through walls. You know, there's no limits, and you're just looking at stuff to make sure everything's like how it should look. It's kind of like that. Like you're just walking around and you're looking at stuff.
Yeah, I don't know if that's like a new thing for games, but I guess the restrictions on this is that you can't, except for like when you're all the way like not in a memory, most of the time you can't traverse the entire ship.
Yeah.
You know, it's always like restricting you to a certain area. And it's always different the way you interact with it because the memories have different items and objects and people in it that block you, or you know, it restricts you in those ways. But I don't know. I don't really have an answer for that. I would I feel like I have experienced things like this before, but just in those terms, not in terms of this game in its entirety. But it is really cool nonetheless. Be interesting to see if it pops up again.
Mhm.
And then for me, I think, and for Lucas Pope, it seems, I think the last thing he is challenging in the general video game development world is that video games should leave you a little bit curious rather than answering all the questions, which is just something that you're kind of disagreeing with. But
I don't disagree at all with that. I just disagree with the fact that nothing seems answered about like the things you're introducing.
mhm.
Like the main plot point is not wrapped up at all. Like it's not explained. I don't like that. Um, but just like, you know, simple things of leaving some things up in the air. That's always good storytelling because one, it engages the reader or the audience's imaginations more, and two, it always leaves room for a sequel. Like, oh, I want to know what the fuck happens, and then if another one comes out, you're going to be on board, and that's how you keep the audience hooked.
Yeah, and not that other games don't do the thing where it leaves you curious. They do. I just feel like a lot of stories are overtold a little bit. And
I
in
don't like,
terms
yeah,
of
when everything's told to you to the point where it's like, all right, already, fuck.
yeah, yeah, right. Like it's, I really like that effort thing. I've always felt that way. Like I like to really earn the story. And in terms of a sequel, I think, well, not I think, but I was listening to that interview, and he said that when he was like right before he shipped it out or published it, whatever, he had a title in well, at the very end of the game, the your character that you are, the insurance investigator, he's at his desk in his office or whatever, and he he's like he gets the final book in his hands, and then at the end you can access this very last memory from the Obra Dinn,
Mm.
because there's someone that was left living that sent this stuff to him, I guess.
Yeah,
And
there had to
he like
be.
yeah, so he allows him access to what happened in the very end. And after that, you get to look around that office at this bookshelf, and there's a whole bunch of stuff on there. And I guess depending how you play the game and how well you play it, there are more or less there are more or fewer items on that shelf. And one item that shows up there is this book that he said originally it had a title on it, and right before he shipped it, he took the title off because it was basically like his thoughts on a sequel to this game, or his thoughts on another game featuring this insurance investigator,
Mm.
which would be cool. But by the by the end of the game, he was like, "I'm fucking withered by making this." He's
No
like, "I don't
more.
know, like I want to do it, but I don't know if I can." So it would be cool to see something else like this, especially if it got a little bit more involved and it was something that interested you a little more. But overall, man, really cool. Um, yeah, he's got another game that I think is out now. It's it's more for kids, I think, or it's more accessible for kids. It's called Mars After Midnight. and it's for this little like handheld console. I think it's exclusively for this console. It's called a Playdate or something. It almost looks like a Game Boy.
It's weird.
But I don't know really what it's about, but it looks goofy. It looks like a cool Game Boy game. Just more graphics are a little bit more involved.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, so I think that was a decent deconstructing of explanation of the deconstructing of what video games can be. Do you think so?
Right on. Absolutely.
All right. Golly. Are you ready for Top 5 Times?
Sure.
Another edition of Top 5 Times, where we talk about top 5 things somehow relevant to the game or book we're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's my shitty intro to this segment. This segment.
This awesome segment.
All right. Did you think of a couple?
Yeah, you told me to do the top 5 times, so I did them real quick immediately after I got off the text box with you.
Did you do all the top 5 times?
I sure did.
Oh, well, let's hear yours. I did some, but yeah,
you told me to do top 5 times, so I did all top 5 times.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Number 1, a time your butthole has betrayed you. It's related to boats because a lot of people got scurvy and different, stomach ailments. Go on.
Well, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
A time my butthole has betrayed me. You answer first.
Too many to count. As you get older, sometimes things just don't go the way you plan, and you drink a lot of coffee, and you're like, oh, my stomach hurts a little, and then you're betrayed. Maybe you're driving down the road, and a simple squeaker turns into a wet mess. Or perhaps you completely fill your britches when you're at a wedding or a funeral. Perhaps you are filling your stuff with mud. You got mud in your pants.
Are these all things that happen to you?
No, I haven't. I've never shit my pants at a wedding or a funeral, but I can see it happening in the future, maybe one day.
Yeah. I don't know if I have a...
Like you never been in school and then all of a sudden you had a traumatic bathroom experience, or you were working and then I gotta go to the bathroom, and then it's all of a sudden it's one of those photo finishes where you just pull your pants down and just make it, and then you realize the bowl was closed, like the lid was closed.
I think I've gotten close to that, but I don't think I've ever actually had a traumatic poop experience. But
that's good.
I will say, just to give a little bit of something here, I will say something that I am nervous about by the time this comes out. This is in the past, but something that always makes me nervous when traveling is finding a bathroom.
Especially
because
when you go to Europe and you have to pay for the bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Or you go to China and or Japan, sometimes even they have the traditional hole in the ground. Or you go to India and you get the deli belly and you're on one of those fucking sleeper buses and you're up there and you're just shitting your pants nonstop. Some people shit in like plastic bags and throw them out the window. I've heard that numerous times from many travelers. All those things scare me because I don't want to poop my pants anywhere, especially on the road somewhere in another country.
Yeah. But when I was in London, there was a night where we all had to take a piss, and it was like late. It was like 6:30 or something, but that's like late for over there. It seems like restaurants start closing around like 6-7 over there.
That's weird.
And yeah, so and there aren't a lot of public bathrooms in general, and the ones that are there, you often do have to pay for. So we're just wandering around the city just looking for a fucking bathroom. And eventually I think we found a bar that let us use it. But man, and we didn't have, a lot of times we didn't have the change to pay for because I think a lot of them are coin operated in London.
Yeah.
And we didn't have the change. Yeah, so that's a fucking nightmare.
That
right.
reminds me when we were in Columbus and we ended up like pissing on a random fence somewhere in like some ghetto
Oh yeah,
area. Like we had to
I
take
forgot about
turns.
that.
Like one had to watch because there's like a main road right there, but there was nowhere to go to the bathroom anywhere. And I think it was right after we left like a fucking beer tasting or something. So they're like, I gotta piss really bad. And I was like, Bryce, I'm gonna go piss on this wall or something. That's another one because my day job, a lot of times I encounter because I'm traveling all the time. I'm encountering many stretches of times where there's nowhere I could use the restroom, and I'm just like,
Yeah,
oh god damn it. And so I mean, sometimes you're just pissing in a Gatorade bottle or something, but other times it's just like I don't know. It could be almost detrimental to your health. You're like, I have to go
I
to the
know.
bathroom so bad, and there is nowhere. And then that's when you get into that. I'm sweating, and there's
Uh
problems. Next up on top 5 times, they're not all about buttholes.
huh. Oh, good.
A time you thought you really sucked at something but found some sort of redemption. I'll take the lead on this one. I think the most applicable for me would be a lot of times where I submit my writing and I go stretches, which I'm sure you've had this actually just recently, where it's like, oh, I must fucking suck. I keep getting rejected, or this one story nobody wants it. It must be terrible. But then I found like recently I'm actually selling a lot of works that previously I thought were just like nobody wanted them, they're garbage, nobody likes them. It turns out it must have just been the wrong time, wrong places, whatever. But people do seem to appreciate what I'm working on, so that makes me a lot happier. But there was a few stretches where I'm like, why am I even fucking doing this? Nobody cares, everybody hates me, and I'm garbage.
Right. I'm going to give two answers just for the sake of tossing things up here. But my first one is going in when I started trying out art in high school. I took ceramics just because I needed to fill an elective, and I didn't really care about it. And then uh, we got a new art teacher when I took that class, I think, and he brought the ceramics program to our high school that we didn't really have before. So we brought like wheels and pottery wheels and all this technology and stuff and glazing chemicals to make really cool stuff. And I got interested in it, and then I ended up being like the best one at pottery once he came and was teaching us.
That
And that's
actually, you know
honestly,
what? Not to cut you off, that actually goes perfect for one of my later questions, which is a time you nearly gave up on something but didn't, and we're happy you stuck it through to the end.
okay.
That sounds like exactly what you just explained with that one.
All right. Well, that's my answer for that then.
So what's your answer for this one?
All right. Well, then I'm just gonna say the poem that I got accepted in the Star 82 review because I submitted that thing 26 times. This might have been an answer before for a previous top 5 times. I don't know, but I submitted that poem 26 times, and then I think the 27th time that they finally fucking accepted it. So truly, it just goes to show that someone likely enjoys what you create, and it might just take a really long time to find the people it belongs to, or belongs to you, but the people that want it.
See, I
And
thought you were gonna say spank the carp because you finally got accepted after 8,000 tries of getting rejected and told you were
I was
horrible.
gonna add that. I was gonna tack that on to this because yes, I am currently in a period where I feel like I fucking suck. And I'm in a period where I'm considering trying to just go back to fiction and get good at it for once. But I do also enjoy poetry because I like the short form and being able to just like have a final piece in a short amount of time. But yeah, I haven't been getting I've been getting mostly rejections this year compared to what I was getting used to last year. And I I finally got accepted to Spank the Carp. I've been rejected by them like 4 times. Caleb got accepted the first time he fucking tried.
I didn't really
And
try, I
they
just submitted an old story.
and they accept really weird stuff. So I got a weird poem published, or accepted to be published with Spank the Carp.
Woohoo!
And
You in the pond now, boy.
Yeah, now I'm officially a writer.
Mm. Well, I'm just gonna skip one because I already asked you. A time you nearly gave up on something, but then we're happy you stuck it through to the end. That usually happens to me with books. Like, I remember when I read Notes from the Underground, the first half of that, I was like, I think I'm just gonna quit. I'm not liking it. And then I end up the second half, I really ended up liking. I can't remember specifically some other books, but that's happened a few times where it's like almost gave up on something, and then it turns out to be one of my favorite reads. So I'll have to just go with that. Um, Ooh, here we go. A time you did something mean for no reason and felt bad about it.
Oh, I know that I've done this before. Do you have your answer?
Um, there are a few times in my life because I'm kind of a practical joker. I like pulling gags on people, especially long-term gags, as you know, uh, such as making somebody believe that I'm not in PA Bards by telling them I'm in PA Bards repeatedly without showing proof, and then it turns out but that's a harmless one.
And the New
But
Yorker one?
well, that I'm in that too. I'm trying to think. As I've gotten older, I've tried to be a much kinder person, so I can't really say I have any recent ones, but I'm sure in my younger days I've pulled gags on people where I ended up feeling bad about it. Usually it might just be teasing or making fun of somebody. I do it to their faces, but maybe it would be like in a group setting, and I realized after the fact, I was like, I busted his balls too many times and made him like you could tell he's probably physically like somebody is in the room is uncomfortable because I made them uncomfortable rather than just like a light razz and then you move on. Maybe you stick to making fun of somebody a little too much, or I've done that before and I felt bad about it. I try not to do that anymore. Try to if I'm going to tease people, I try to include everybody in the teasing.
Yeah. I used to be a fucking asshole in high school and middle school in particular.
A
But
bully, huh?
yeah, I feel like it took me a long time to truly like feel bad. So I wouldn't say I can't say that I did this stuff and I felt like genuinely bad afterwards, but I did feel like angry and stupid afterwards, I guess. So like because people would like call me out on it and or shit like that. There was a time where there was this guy, like this was like back in the MySpace days. There was this guy that I was friends with on MySpace, and I would just get so angry because he would wear flip flops all the time,
Mm,
and I just started
weird thing to
constantly
get mad about.
like I was like, "Why are you a guy wearing flip flops all the time?" I started to rag him all the time in comments. I was like, "Why are you fucking wearing flip flops, you idiot?" And and then people eventually like ganged up on me because I was being a bully and an
Good, you got your
internet bully.
comeuppance for being a
And there's another
cyberbully.
case. There's another case that I remember where me and my friend in high school were driving around the school at night, and there was this girl sitting in the parking lot at the school with her friends or something, and we were, I don't know, we have water in the car for some reason, like cups of water. So we filled the cups up, drove by her, and just threw full cups of
Fuck,
water at her.
Jesus,
And then
you're an animal.
I know, and I felt bad, but I also thought it was hilarious. And
Mm.
so she ended up telling the principal, and or threatened to tell the principal. And then the next day at school, my friend was like, "All right, let's just play it cool. Like, if she's nice, we'll just like might get off the hook here. She won't say anything. If we're nice back to her." So she like walked by us in the hall, and she was like, "Hi," and my friend's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And then as she was walking away, I started like chuckling in
Mm.
remembrance of the water. and and I think she like looked back and like snarled at us or something, and my friend was like, "Why did you do that?" And then I ruined it for us, and we got in trouble.
Good job.
But yeah,
I've
so
had
I used
some
to be a dickhead.
I had some instances in middle school where I've done things that were quite mean, but I don't feel bad about them at all. Uh, I grew up in an area where it was more of a beat or get beat kind of scenarios you'd find yourself in. So I remember, like, me and my one buddy, we often got into tussles with people for stupid reasons, probably. But I remember one kid was like talking a lot of smack. And then one day we caught him at the playground. And without saying a word, me and my buddy looked at each other, walked up to the kid, immediately put him in the Dudley Death Drop. If you're not a wrestling fan, just look it up on YouTube. It's where one, I did the picking up. You pick a guy up on your shoulder, and the other one basically is a cutter, grabs his head. And we did that on the grass, and then we took his shoes off, threw him in the garbage, and then I think we threw dirt on him and left. And we did that a few times to that kid, and he never learned. Like, he just was an asshole all the time. So, but I don't feel bad about it at all because the kid was a dickhead. I remember one time the kid, my nephew, when he was probably like 6, 7 years old, which my nephew was an asshole too. The kid threw frozen dog shit in his face. And it like cut him. He got cut with frozen dog shit. So fuck that kid. So we used to just roughhouse that kid all the time. But yeah, we would always run up on that kid and just randomly do like a quick double team wrestling move on him. And it always was great. And then we just walk away and the kid was like, he'd be in a heap. He never learned his fucking lesson. He's ridiculous. Yeah,
you gotta learn your lessons.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into our next one. This is more specifically towards you because I know what kind of monster you were in your youth.
Okay.
A time you beat up a special needs kid for their lunch money.
Really?
I know you've done that at least 10 times. So what's a specific time that you beat up a special needs kid and stole their lunch money? I've never done it, so I can't do that, but
I haven't done this, Caleb.
Wow, really? You were the special need kid that got beat up for his lunch money.
Probably.
Top 5 times. What were your top 5 since you wrote some?
Well, I had well, I'll do like 2 of mine.
What the fuck did you ask me to write them if you did them all?
I didn't know if I had time to do all of them, so I did a couple. Okay. Let's see. Oh, I like 3 of these. Favorite insurance mascot.
Top 8 times. That's not a top time.
I do favorites for top 5 times.
That's not a top time.
Okay, what's your favorite insurance commercial? What's your top insurance commercial?
I fucking hate insurance commercials and I hate insurance mascots to no goddamn end. So my answer would be none of them. I do. I legitimately hate every, like, I get so pissed off when the stupid Liberty Mutual ads come up on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then now they're on Hulu all the time. I fucking hate them. And I've specifically refused to ever move on from Progressive just because I hate every insurance ad I've ever seen of any insurance company, including Progressive, but I find them the least irritating. So I guess Progressive, Flo, she's the best because the other one's inferior. I like the Allstate guy. He's got a smooth voice.
The black guy?
Yeah. Why do you gotta be a black guy? He has a name. He's a famous actor.
Well, I don't know his name, and that's the only black insurance guy I can think of. So
that was gonna Washington.
That was gonna be my answer. Actually, I always loved that guy's voice.
Doesn't J.K. Simmons do insurance too?
Who's that?
Oh, he's been in a million things. He was in Oz. He played in the Spider-Man movies as J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh,
he was in Whiplash.
Yeah, he might. Yeah, maybe.
He's in commercials. I can't remember if he's in insurance commercials or not.
Yeah, I feel like they're like a credit card.
You know what? I don't mind the Mayhem guy. Dean Winters, I think his name is. He was in like Rescue Me, and he was in Oz too. He always is beat up and stuff. Those are okay. Like, yeah, that was for me. If the insurance commercial doesn't piss me off, then I guess that's a win. But like the fucking Liberty Bibberty, that guy, and the fucking what's the ostrich? I don't know. I hate him. I hate Liberty Mutual probably more than anything.
Yeah, those are annoying. I agree.
They suck. And I hate the Geico gecko because it's stupid. Well, it's a gecko because it almost sounds like Geico. Fuck you in the butt, you fucking lizard. Stupid. Yeah. You might get a British boy, you fucking piece of shit, fucking reptile. I hate it. Oh, I do. I hate it.
Calm down, Caleb. All right, I'll just do one more. So it's top 7 times today, right?
Top 7 times. Well, that one wasn't a top time, so that doesn't even count.
Well, top time you thought you might die mid-travel.
Mid-travel? Well, when you ran over that mattress was kind of traumatic on the way to Columbus. I think that could have ended badly. my giant box truck at work, I flipped it one time, and that was probably the closest I thought to death. Because I literally cleared a mailbox, cleared a hillside, and landed very hard on the ground and slid many, many feet and yards.
That would be
And that thing's like
terrifying.
14 tons, so that was dramatic. I was in the snow.
Yeah, that would be scary. I've never had any instances of like really terrible turbulence or anything because I've only flown like a couple of times, and I don't think I've had any bad boat experiences. So it would have to be a car, and yeah, I think it was that time that I was going to your house last January, and it was snowing, and I started going. I was at the stop sign and I stopped, and then I started going, but it was the intersection is weird right there because it's like the oncoming traffic from the left just doesn't have a stop sign, so they just keep coming, and from the right too. I think it's a really weird intersection. I don't know. It kind of just bends in front of where I was stopped, so I started going, but right after my stop sign, it was like a patch of snow. And I just started spinning out, and I got stuck right in the middle of the intersection. And with nobody having to stop, I just have all these cars barreling towards me. And the one truck like was late on her horn, and she put on her brakes early enough that she ended up hitting me, but really not too bad, fortunately. And I was afraid for my life, but I did get the entire thing covered by my insurance because we both had the same insurance. So
That's good.
and did well. So now my car looks better than it did before. So really a happy ending, but that was terrifying.
Yeah, sounds terrifying.
There was another time, I think back in like December, it was raining kind of. I don't think it was even raining that hard, but I was getting on the ramp to get on the Boulevard of the Allies in the city or to leave the city. And I was going like just a little too fast, and my car just started losing control, losing traction. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, sure, I was going to slam into the median and into the wall and just flip. But fortunately I had regained control. But that got my adrenaline pumping too. But I think we're all set today. I think that was a good conversation. Everybody play Return of the Obra Dinn.
Or don't.
You know what? What'd you like more, Caleb, since you didn't even play the game? Did you like the book or the game better?
I preferred Stephen King's on writing over Return of the Obra Dinn.
Yeah. I mean, in a case like this, it's hard to, since I played both of them, I'm gonna weigh both of them out here. For a case like this where we're talking about things that deconstruct a medium, it's hard to choose one or the other. But since this is a podcast where we're a couple of writers talking about video games and books, as a writer, I think I have to go with the book. However, Return of the Obra Dinn was fucking amazing, and
It was incredible.
I don't know if I'd play it again because it's sort of like
I was going to say, I forgot to bring that up. It has no replayability though, because like most point and click games, once you solve the mystery, it's what do you do?
Yeah.
You know? Solve it better, faster.
Like, and it's like watching The Sixth Sense, stuff like that. Like you know what happens now or how it plays out. So there's kind of no point in revisiting it. But you can do it better than before, I guess. So it has like a little bit, but I probably won't. But I would play I would play his other games for sure. So, all right. Thank you, everybody, for listening to Arcade Bookshop. Stay tuned 2 weeks from now for another brand new episode of Arcade Bookshop, which is very likely to be a conversation about another video game. If you've listened this far, please, 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 please let us know. Shout us out. And remember to rate us 5 stars if you haven't already. You can follow us on Instagram at arcade_bookshop. That's mainly where I'm putting everything now. I don't want to be on TikTok anymore if I don't have to. I still have it, but if you want to be totally updated, arcade_bookshop on Instagram. Yeah. We're also at YouTube and TikTok at Arcade Bookshop. And Caleb, do you want to talk about DPW?
DPW is still making episodes every week. They come out every Tuesday, usually in the morning, sometimes later when I don't feel like editing them until Tuesday. And we have guests coming on in the next few months. I don't know when this comes out. Also, my publication history has been growing. So if you go to calebjameskk.com, you can find links to everything. The publications, the podcast, the dirty videos Bryce does when I'm not around, all of it.
Hey. All right. And last thing, we're looking for guests. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, if you have some kind of connection with video games or writing, anything like that, reach out to us. Gmail, arcadebookshop@gmail.com. Reach out on Instagram, whatever. We want to talk to you.
Unless you work for Geico, then you can go fuck yourself.
Yeah, fuck yourself.
Fuck your butt.
Or if you work for the IRS, I don't want to hear about that shit.
No, probably not. It's probably very boring.
So thank you all again for listening. Maybe do as we do. Keep a controller in one hand and a book in the other. No finger guns today.